Senator Franken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Professor Barrett, on the financial disclosure report that you submitted to this committee, you listed two payments of $2,100 each from the Alliance Defending Freedom, or ADF. ADF, for those who are not familiar with it, is a far-right group that files cases and lobbies for policies that ADF characterizes as defending religious liberty. But when you actually take a look at ADF's work, it's clear that the group's real purpose is to advance an extreme version or vision of society. The Southern Poverty Law Center, which tracks hate groups, describes ADF as a group that has, quote, supported the recriminalization of homosexuality in the United States and criminalization abroad. Criminalization of homosexuality. Has defended state-sanctioned sterilization of transgender people abroad. Has linked homosexuality to pedophilia and claims that a homosexual agenda will destroy Christianity and society. In addition to the lawsuits it files, ADF also runs a training program for law students and young attorneys to share its views. Professor Barrett, if my understanding is correct, the payments you received from ADF were connected to presentations you delivered at ADF's training seminars. Is that right?
Yes, I gave a 1-hour presentation on constitutional law.
Mm-hmm. And you delivered these presentations to law students participating in the Blackstone Legal Fellowship Program. Blackstone is an ADF program. Were you aware of that when you accepted their invitation to speak?
I actually wasn't aware until I received the honorarium and saw the ADF on the check, or maybe when I saw an email and saw the signature line. But yes, ADF is the organization that sponsors the Blackstone.
You weren't aware of it?
When Senator Franken, I can't remember exactly when I became aware of it. I was aware of the Blackstone program for some time.
But you were not aware when the gig.
By the time I spoke, I was aware. I can't remember exactly when I was aware, but
is it your habit of accepting money from organizations without first learning what they do?
Senator, I'm invited to give a lot of talks as a law professor, and it is not, I don't know what all of ADF's policy positions are, and it has never been my practice to investigate all of the policy positions of a group that invites me to speak.
So if you got, let's say in the 70s, I did lectures, and say Pol Pot had asked me to speak, but I didn't check it out. You think that would have been good judgment?
No, Senator, and if I were invited to speak by Pol Pot or by the KKK or a group like that, I would certainly decline the invitation. But I think it's a long way from...
Well, let me just tell you this, that Blackstone's affiliation with ADF is clearly stated on its website. The first question on Blackstone's frequently asked questions page is, who created the Blackstone Legal Fellowship? The answer is, Blackstone Legal Fellowship is a program of Alliance Defending Freedom. I mean, this is a group that fights against equal treatment of LGBT people. This is a group which calls for the sterilization of transgender people abroad.
I was not aware of that.
Well, that begs my question again. So you will speak to anyone who pays you? You don't check out who they are? I mean, if they're the lobby for dogs and puppies and American Pie, but happen to be, I don't know, anti-Semitic, you wouldn't do any research?
Senator, again, if I were invited to speak by a hate group, if I were invited to speak by the KKK...
Well, sounds like the ADF is something of a hate group, doesn't it?
Senator, that was not what my interactions with Blackstone were like. The people who I interacted with, we had a wonderful group of students from Notre Dame go. I never witnessed any discriminatory conduct in any way. I never had a whiff of that. My presentation was about constitutional interpretation. It had nothing to do with those topics, and it just was not my experience. I didn't have...
Do you know what the Southern Poverty Law Center is?
I learned it recently, yes.
You learned it just recently?
No, I'm sorry. I thought you were going to ask me if I knew about the Southern Poverty Law Center's classification of ADF as a hate group. And
no, I didn't ask you that. What I asked you was a simple question.
I do know what the Southern Poverty Law Center is.
Okay, what are they? What do they do?
Well, I'm speaking generally. I'm generally aware that the Southern Poverty Law Center fights discrimination and that they do classify some groups as hate groups.
Yeah, they track hate groups. And you spoke at an event sponsored by one of those hate groups.
Senator,
now, I question your judgment. The root word of judgment is judge.
Senator, with respect, I did not have that impression of ADF. And ADF, if it were truly a hate group, it wouldn't be co-counsel right now. It has a brief in the Supreme Court with Wilmer Hale, which is one of the most reputable and esteemed law firms in the country. And they wouldn't be co-counsel with ADF if it were a hate group. I assure you they wouldn't be co-counsel with the KKK. I gather that the Southern Poverty Law Center's designation of ADF as a hate group is controversial. I didn't learn about that until more recently. But again, that was not my experience with the Blackstone program.
Is it your position that no hate group has ever filed or co-filed a brief to the Supreme Court?
I haven't researched that question. That is not my position. My position is that a very well-respected law firm would certainly not serve as co-counsel on a brief with a hate group because, as you say, if there's a hate group, just like I wouldn't give a speech in front of a hate group. I wouldn't give a speech to the KKK. I think that...
But you yourself said that you don't take it upon yourself to research who you're speaking to. So how do you know? I mean, not many groups call themselves the KKK. Only one does. But there are plenty of hate groups out there. So if you yourself said you had no idea when you accepted this speech, you didn't do any research into them, you are saying to me that you don't vet who pays you to give a speech. Now that to me is irresponsible and shows bad judgment because the Pol Pot was a pretty extreme example, but I would vet whoever asked me to speak, especially whether I was speaking for free or I was getting paid. And it seems to me that this demonstrates extremely bad judgment.
Why don't we ask for an answer, Senator, and then we'll move
Yes, Senator, I would like to say it wasn't, I had several colleagues who had given lectures in the Blackstone program, and as I said, we had several groups of law students that I found very engaged and that I liked very much, who had gone to Blackstone, so I was aware of the program, and I respected both the students and the faculty who I knew had participated in it. So again, I had no reason to think it was a hate group, and that was certainly not my experience of it.
Okay, can I ask one last question then that just deserves an answer?
Sure.
Okay. I'm a little confused. Do you vet groups that you talk to or not? Because when your first response to my question was that you don't. So I want to ask you, was that answer truthful?
Perhaps yes, it was truthful, but let me say this. If I received a random invitation from a group that I had never heard of and had no experience of, I would look it up and try to figure out what it was. In this particular context, I had heard of the Blackstone program.
That sounds like your first statement wasn't truthful, because your first answer was that you don't vet.
That I don't look up every policy position that a group invites me, that a group before whom I'm speaking might have, because I don't feel like affiliation with the group commits me to all of that group's policy positions. I will say, Senator, that if it was a group that I had no idea who they were, of course, I would try to figure out who they were before I accepted an invitation. I had a general sense of the Blackstone program and respect for those who I knew who were participating in it.
Thank you.